Even a zygote, when an egg and a sperm meet, that frequency is real. That frequency is also akin to a portal and how our souls can be seated within that portal so that we can birth into this world as human beings through frequency. We are walking beings of light through our DNA since the beginning of time. And now that light language is becoming more of the talk. One thing that we really do need to remember, though, is that we can't forget our DNA. That is our light instrument. That is how we are receiving information, how we are continuously becoming matter, because consciousness is informing matter. That's what DNA is. So if we want to evolve, we have to listen and we have to remember what is the actual instrument and the modality and take care of that, which is our DNA.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm excited to continue our conversation about human evolution and human consciousness. I want to dive deeper into understanding our human DNA and the intricacies of our strands, because we only know 2 strands of DNA, but actually, there's many more than that. So I'm excited to have this conversation with a beautiful sister, Ruslana Remennikova. She is a sound practitioner and an author of a book that's coming out in January, Activating Our 12-Stranded DNA, Secrets of the Dodecahedral DNA for Completing Our Human Evolution. Welcome, Ruslana. I'm so happy to have you, sister.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for sharing your platform with me. And I am feeling so much energy from the grounding exercise that we just did. Brought so much life to my rootedness. So thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I feel this conversation is very important for whoever is going to be listening to it. So we set a lot of intentions. I'm excited to talk about frequency and sound and geometry because Ruslan and I jive on that level. But before we jump into all that, Ruslana, what excites you today from where you sit? I know your book is coming out as an upcoming author. That's a big undertaking.
I was thinking about this question, and the first thing that came to mind, and the most necessary, critical thing that came to mind, is that I must tell you about a story that I think will excite you and relate to your audience. So, back in 2022, I took a trip to the Midwest. I went to the Navajo, beautiful sacred Navajo lands with my partner, now a fiance. And we went to Antelope Canyon. Maybe you've already been there. Maybe you plan to go, or you already know about this beautiful underground temple where there's so much history there. And this was when I began writing I was midway in my book at the time. We were in the upper canyon. Yes, I believe we were in the upper canyon. And as I was navigating through the canyon, looking around, I decided to take a picture of the sun with the rocks and the information just stimulating all around me. And at the time, I didn't understand what was pulling me to take this picture, but I trusted it. And I took this picture without even realizing that my fiance, myself, and the other tourists around me were not the only people that were just not even present, but in that picture, there was nothing but the sun and rock. At least that's what I thought. When I was finalizing my book, something nudged me. I woke up at 4 a.m. with an urgency to go and look at this picture 2 years later, right before my book was coming out, as I'm writing about Arcturian energy, angelic spirits, the wisdom that we are fully capable of accessing, but it's about listening. So I looked right at that picture. Can you imagine? I have 15,000 pictures on my telephone, on my phone. And as I'm looking at these pictures, I saw that I'm not the only, not just the person that's taking the photo, but there's actually a face. There's a face that is situated right above where there's a prism of light coming down. And the image was a face with eyes. It was cerebral, it was an orb, it was eyes, a beautiful face, a mouth. It's very obvious that this being wanted to be seen. And so when I thought about this incident recently, I said, I need to tell and talk about this with Diana. And I had a feeling you would ask me something that would instigate this conversation, because we know that we're not the only intelligence on this planet. We're constantly being informed. And that is, our DNA is an instrument of that. What I felt in that moment when I saw this being, that being wanted to be seen. Maybe not in the time that I was capable of seeing it, but in the time that it inspired me to go and look at my phone and see this picture. So this picture is found in my book. It's being published. And I believe that through the frequency of Arcturus, it was able to transcend through the realms that we find ourselves confined in, space and time. But through this light energy, through this prism, through this geometry, we can meet in the middle, we can intersect. So that's what excited me when I thought about that question.
I love these connections with the realms, and more so like the validation. I think the validation is always so beautiful, especially when it comes to photography. I've captured some things over the course of the years. Example that's coming to my mind was one of my last Burning Mans where I felt this energy of the seraphim, the dragons that we were working through the whole week there. And they were just so prevalent. This is back in 2019. And it was very intense experience at that festival. One of the last nights they had the effigy of the temple. And I captured many pictures. And when I went back and started developing them, one of them just was like mind boggling. It was this face of a dragon coming out of the fire. It was the dragon. There's no doubt about it. I actually ended up posting it on Facebook and different Burning Man communities. I have it printed out in metal at home. And it's just one of those confirmations and validations of our interaction with the other side. And it's like a wink of the divine. It's like, here we are. Just if you had any doubts, it's all here.
I find so much resonance between dragons and angels. In some ways, I feel that they're so connected. And dragons and angels exist among us.
Absolutely. All these frequencies, there's elemental frequencies, galactic frequencies. We're just starting to understand all these frequencies and what they mean. To our topic of DNA, how they impact the DNA and how they activate. Because my experience from just channeling light language, source language, the angelic realms, how I'm able to bring it forward is more through the song. It's very smooth, and the dragons have a language, and it's a bit of lower tonality and more kind of guttural, but the codes are there, and I feel them when I channel them or when I'm activating for someone else, and people experience them too. So I think they're meant to do different things, perhaps, and definitely activate those aspects in our codes within us on the cellular level, and those memories of that we are those frequencies. We are quantum. We are frequency being.
One way that I feel when you mentioned that we're starting to wake up and become more attuned to the world around us through frequency. I feel and I'm seeing that there is a tremendous reemergence of how we are relating to water, and is not only an element that is healing, but it's also half of our DNA. Our DNA is composed of frequency, light, and water, aside from the scientific information that we are already aware of. But water is such a key character in the story of creation. What I'm very interested in is how we are starting to explore water, not just as a source of survival or a source for life, but also how frequency can translate in water. Water doesn't only contain memory. Water is alive. Water has capability. And so one way that we can explore how we're talking about codes and light language and frequency, but water is a medium that can prove that frequency and light hold infinite power. And water is proof of that. Water can communicate. Water has an ability to actually listen to what you're saying and respond back. There are many studies that are showing this already.
The Emoto Institute, of course, is the most famous when Professor Emoto was doing all these experiments with saying love or gratitude to water, and the molecules would form into this beautiful snowflake, geometrical, perfectly coherent crystals, versus if you were not taking care of the water or not giving it love or saying bad words, it would turn into this really muddy water. So that just proves to your point, Ruslana, that it is alive and it is a medium. And I think I've mentioned in one of my podcasts, I also have a memory that in ancient Egypt, we as high priests and priestesses used to actually tone to the water as part of the rituals, and put the codes in the water and then drink the waters to activate
Yeah.
the DNA.
Yes. There are several scientists, water researchers that are showing tremendous work. One that has gained a lot of traction recently is Veda Austin. Perhaps you have already known the name. She's a New Zealand water research scientist. Some of the work that she has been showing just by speaking with water and water responding back with imagery is profound. Not only profound, but it is the future. There are academic professors such as Dr. Gerald Pollack who are supporting her work, which is amazing. That means that we, meaning the new science, the new era, is gaining more credential into unraveling these on the fringe fields of research. With my book, I was very interested in the dodecahedral model. So the dodecahedron, as you already know, was introduced as a legacy by the Pythagoreans, specifically Plato. But before that, it was part of the story of creation, just channeled through Plato. I'm very interested in the dodecahedron for a number of reasons, but to make the story shorter.
Yeah, Ruslana, maybe for those who are not familiar with the dodecahedron, tell us how many sides to that geometry and what makes it part of creation.
Sure. Okay. So many years ago, thousands of years ago, Plato introduced 5 different solids. He introduced a cube, which is symbolic for the earth, the element of earth. He introduced the tetrahedron, which is the element of fire, the octahedron, which is air, the icosahedron, which is water, and the dodecahedron, which stands for or symbolizes
Ether.
ether. That's right.
Mhm.
As he gave these teachings, which again come more from the Pythagoreans, there is this underlying respective relationship that geometry is congruent with life, with how we relate to the world around us. So now that we are in this era where sacred geometry is a blockbuster now, we are starting to approach geometry in a more metaphysical way, where we are starting to see that geometry isn't just a pattern of shapes. Geometry actually teaches us patterns of intelligence, patterns of wisdom that is embedded with the light and sound that surrounds us. And that might be still etheric to say, but vibration is the construct of all life. Vibration is how we are created. DNA is specific to frequency. Frequency is a vibration per time or per second. We like to say per second as a metric, but I'll say per time. Frequency is one whole oscillation of a vibration per metric, per time. And then with light, the way that water and DNA marry, light works through not just DNA, but with water specifically. There's a lot of confusion and debate around that, but I'm siding with water in this case. They work collectively.
Probably my audience also follows the ancient aliens and Anunnaki. And we do know that when we were created, perhaps we were also cut off from our original DNA. As you were saying, more than just the two, because we know we connected to much greater potential. And it's just maybe on purpose. We were in some ways clipped in our evolution here, but we do have access to so much more if we remember what that is.
We do. And the scientific world is beginning to realize that. Oh, Susumu Ono in 1986 introduced junk DNA. There's a lot of talk about that already. That's an old topic now. But the junk DNA, which is actually our non-coding DNA, is 95, 97% of our being. There's so much rich content in our non-coding DNA where a lot of our memories they code. And whether or not we can understand that or access, talking about on a medical and scientific level, whether or not we can understand that or access that and accept it, it's there. One thing that Susumu Ono really, I admire him so much for introducing this question. In his studies, he converted the 4 nucleotides of DNA, A, T, G, and C, just for feasibility. He converted them to musical notes. And in the 80s, there was the introduction of creating music out of DNA. Everything's reciprocal. We live in a dualistic atmosphere on this planet, at least. So the question became, if we're able to convert DNA to music, is there a relationship then with how sound can impact our DNA? Is there a musicality behind our DNA?
That's a great question. I would say yes, absolutely.
Music
Yeah.
tones are based off of frequency,
Mhm.
not just the sounds that we hear. Sound is vibration.
For sure. And like I mentioned, I experienced that real time when I'm working on someone. Like we had a workshop this past Friday and noticed in that one we were singing a lot. There was a lot of Hathor, whatever we call it, energy that came through. But that's what was needed at the time for the group. And there was a certain level of frequency and activation happening for the people and how they would resonate to it or how their bodies will move into it. I'm also like, of course, a sound practitioner, but also being also sound channeler. It's been really fascinating to observe and what it does to people's energy fields where it's they go into these like shakes and wiggles and parts of their body starts activating and it's like parts are re-remembering this frequency. It's like familiar for them.
Absolutely. And that's where I was approaching it earlier, is that vibration is the modality of all life as we know it. But vibration is so significant to how it impacts our DNA. Even if we don't listen to music, it still surrounds us. It's like homeopathy, where you put a small amount of, let's just say, for lack of a better word, drug into water, and then you keep reducing that concentration until there's nothing in it, until there's absolutely no drug left in the water. But there's still the momentum, the spin of
Mm.
the life of that drug in the water. So that almost that minuscule concentration, even though it's zero, the momentum of that, the spin, the vibration of it is the homeopathy. It is the medicine. That memory of water impacts us.
So let's go back to the dodecahedron and how that relates to the 12 strands of DNA.
So the shape of the dodecahedron is what I believe the complex molecular shape of our real DNA.
Mhm.
And you can see the dodecahedral model in living organisms naturally. So, for example, viral capsids, most of them exist in dodecahedral or icosahedral, that water, platonic solid. They naturally exist in that phase, in that state.
The pandemic we went through, I think even that specific virus was also, I think, an icosahedral type of geometry.
Right, the capsid. It is, yes. With the dodecahedron, there are many references already in research, not just in the medical system, but in astronomy with water and its relationship with water, like the icosahedron, with music, dodecahedral music. There is a lot of speculation with how there's a new paradigm forming about our DNA, and whether or not it's fully engaged or fully been exposed in the system yet, it's coming. The book is just the primer of that. And
Mm.
actually, when I submitted my manuscript, I had two people message me and they said, "Have you read Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marcianic?"
Mhm.
And I said, "No." And they said she talked about the 12 strands because it was channeled to her through the Pleiadians. So then I got the book and then I started reading it. And I remember she gave a very general kind of like a message about our 12 strands. But anyway, the dodecahedron, I was really inspired by the shape. I come back because I want to give a very reciprocal relationship between water and DNA. But what I did was I converted the dodecahedron to frequencies. Remember when you said about the 720 and the 1080
Yeah.
being whether or not that should be our microphone level today? I converted those frequencies along with 7 other frequencies on a harp, dodecahedral frequencies on a harp, and I played them to water. And I did the same experiments that Dr. Emoto and Beta Austin did. Is I exposed the dodecahedral vibrations to water to see how water would respond after I froze it. And so those images, those patterns they're also documented in my book and my experimental studies.
Oh, that's incredible. And what was the result? I'm imagining there were beautiful crystals.
Stars, they're mostly
Yeah.
shapes of pentagons and hexagons, stars, but particularly these patterns, aside from the other patterns that I was seeing that was not dodecahedral, it's more like conversational, exposing the water to imagery. Also, I did some tests where I looked at the water that my fish was swimming in to see what kind of information my water would give me. There's a whole story behind that. But particularly these patterns were hollow. And all of the other patterns were not, that I did with other mediums. But with, as far as the there's 30 edges and 12 pentagons and 20 vertices. There's a reciprocal relationship again with how the icosahedron shares very similar aspects of those numbers as well. I don't want to confuse the audience, but there's that information is so available on any search engine.
So, what inspired you to start this research? It was just something that you decided to explore, or did you have an insight? I'm curious where it all originated from.
I was a chemist. I worked in a contract research organization, specifically in drug discovery. It was crushing my soul. At the time, I didn't realize it. I was evolving. I knew I just didn't like it, but I was good at it. And I was really curious. On my 30, I think it was my 30th birthday, I decided to do it was either 31st or 32nd. I can't remember. Sorry if my numbers don't add up right. But I decided to do a sound healing weekend. I exposed myself to sound healing for the first time ever. And my first sound bath was 5 hours long. It was 5 hours long. And after I had that experience, it was not just a human reset, it was a soul reset.
Mm.
I went deep to places where I've never been before. It moved me. And I realized, even though I didn't know how I'm going to make it, I just knew that I had to do this. It called me, that I'm going to do this. So I left my job. I left my 6-figure job. And I took 2 years to write my book, finish my book. It pit tremendously because I started listening, not just to what everyone else is talking about. I started listening to that cosmic lasso that just got me by the heart and pulled me into the abyss with no clue where I was going. But I knew, I trusted it. I had to do it. So I left my job. I decided that I'm going to start a sound practice. And at the time, I started working at a yoga movement studio called The Art of Us. Kat McGregor and Katie Bosch, I'm going to drop their names because my sound practice started with them and they deserve that acknowledgement because they took me in. And the funny thing is, when we do these sound practitioners, we do these sound sessions, we know that it's not about us. We know that we're the conduit and that we are the vessels. But what I realized was that we can access meta. We can access the cloud. And that cloud helps us understand our patients, the people that we're helping, which is also us, by the way. I'm going to fully say that. I do the sound healing for me. I do it for me. Honestly, I'll do it for me forever. But in this process, I realized that we are, I'm saying I, but also other sound practitioners, I'm including all of us, that we're able to understand and relate to other people while we are creating this stratosphere around us using sound. And when we understand, even though we don't get it, like how we know this about another person, it's part of channeling, we know where they need the sound the most. So then you apply yourself. You apply your human and cosmic self to help better them through sound, and you trust it. I've done this I have over 350 sessions now that I've done. And I realized, when I say realized a lot, but it's such a there's so much self-discovery and awakening and activating who we are through our DNA, but it's also through sound. And sound is a modality of DNA, a frequency is, right? That's why I talk about sound a lot. I'm really relating to DNA. But I started asking people, may I share what I felt through our attuned connection? May I confirm some things about you, if that's all right? I'd pull them away privately. I wouldn't do it in a group setting. And I would say, did you experience having some kind of brain injury? Or do you work with computers specifically? Are you in IT or something? Are you on a new health journey? Did you just have a heart attack or something? Information would just stream. And you know this, I'm sure you experienced something similar. But as sound practitioners, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility beyond just giving sound. It's to be disciplined in how we engage with our emotions. I call it emotional hygiene, not to get so saturated in them, but to be responsible with them to help others.
Yeah. I call it emotional mastery. Emotional hygiene is good too. I love that. Being like that neutral vessel, like pure vessel. I think any type of channeling, I think sound practitioners are channelists essentially because you're listening and you're delivering what the frequency is. The more grounded you are, the more aligned you are, the better is your sound too. And so that's part of the hygiene as well.
Absolutely. So when I realized that I'm not special, everyone has this capability. I just got awakened to it. And I understand the modality of it and how I can use my lifestyle choices and environmental stimulus to access healing for people, and myself included in that pool. To me, it's part of activating our DNA too, my DNA, because I am accessing not just them, but to other realms as well. So, knowing this, having these experiences, I became really interested in getting sound into the medical system beyond just music therapy, because music therapists and sound practitioners are two different people. They're two different professions. Music therapy uses a tapestry of combined music and singing to relieve emotional levels and cognition experiences. Sound frequencies use specific healing resonant frequencies. We work with resonance. Sound healing frequency or sound frequency healing is based off of the principle that everything in the universe has a specific frequency, and it is a structure that allows us to access resonance. Resonance is when two different frequencies are exchanging with each other to be able to reach a desired level. So when you swing a child, you swing them to a certain level. In resonance, we try to achieve that resonance structure or level to get to a physiological response.
Explain to those who don't understand sound so much what you just explained and how that relates also to harmonics.
Harmonics is when we have balance. I'm so glad you asked that. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking that.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the standard treble clef, Note A is 440 hertz. There's a lot of stories around 440 and 432.
It wasn't something I remember, like in World War II, there was a decision they switched from 432 to 440.
There's a lot of different meditations around 440. One of them what began with opera singers. Maybe one of them was from World War II. I'm just going to focus on the current standing, which is a standard A treble clef is 440 hertz.
Mhm.
If you take A and convert it to 432 hertz, your ear will naturally hear a more harmonic, balanced sound. And we resonate, meaning we actually like, some people will be really stern about this, gosh, that they prefer the 440 because it's part of the structure, but 432 resonates with us. And I'll tell you why. As human beings, it resonates with us.
Is
So
it DNA related? I'm sure it is.
it actually is. There's
Well,
DNA
I
is
can.
part of the story. DNA is part
Mhm.
of the story. Okay. Binaural beats. Okay. I'm going to explain this. So there's a reason for everything. When you hear binaural beats, you have one frequency going through one side of your brain, and then you have another frequency entering the other hemisphere of your brain. And then that difference is what your brain targets as healing. So, for example, let's do this. You have 440 going through one ear, and then you have 432 going through the other. Your brain is specific to 8 hertz. It takes the difference. Okay.
Mhm.
8 hertz, if you want to talk about resonance,
That's
humans' resonance,
it's like 7.3. It's around 8. It's around that. And then also 8 hertz is like theta, right? We move into theta, 8 hertz and below,
8
and
hertz,
brainwave.
8
So it's
hertz
yeah.
is Schumann's resonance, is actually 8 hertz is what our planet Earth is vibrating on. The difference between 440 and 432 is 8 hertz. And we are literally, this is what our brain knows and understands. Even though we don't understand, we are born to this difference. Our brain and mind naturally resonate with 432 or 440 for some people, but I'll say 432 is harmonic, meaning
Mm.
balanced, meaning that the frequencies have found a way to be stable with one another. It's more crisp. Also, as you said, our brain regulates with 5 different wavelength bandwidths, and theta is one of them. Theta is 4 to 8 hertz. 4 to 8 hertz is where we can drop into a dream fantasy, our dream land, where we can, and it's different from delta. It's different from you falling asleep. Delta, you're gone.
We have all the beautiful pictures, and when you do hypnosis, and I do that with the clients, that's my goal, to bring everyone to theta. Because
Yeah,
so they can see the pictures, the eyes are moving, but they are still like in deep meditation, so they're able to receive information and still communicate. So they're still communicating from that space if they want to.
there has been a very profound study in 4 different countries where they put their participants into theta so that they can study two-way brain communication. When a person is sleeping in theta, they can still communicate to us while experiencing their dreams or going into another realm. And they did that through training their participants on how to smile or how to blink while they are experiencing their dreams. Now, some of the content in their dreams was more specific towards understanding if they can do math, like something easy, like 1 + 1.
Mhm.
But just the idea that we are starting to awaken to the fact that frequency impacts not only just our emotions and our cognition, but also our unconscious being is We're seeing something on the horizon here. We're seeing that we are propelling into something a lot more vast than we've ever been before. And this isn't about architecture. This isn't about technology. No, this is the expansion of our makeup as a human being. We are becoming deliberate and vast. We are going to where we were supposed to go many years ago, not beyond, before humanity began. No, we are starting to understand what being human means.
So interesting because the word that keeps on coming to me, I've been calling it either human 2.0, but the other one that I like better is human illuminated. Illuminated in a way that not just enlightened, but it actually is able to hold more light. So the light quotient that we can hold in our DNA and light quotient that we can hold in our field and our sacred geometry is going to be much more expansive than what we were able to before. My perspective is more like ascension based and spiritual hierarchy and evolution. What I'm seeing is the DNA completely relates to the spiritual evolution because I feel the more you are on that ladder, so to speak, in your consciousness, the more light quotient you can hold, that illumination I was talking about, and that's all DNA related because your DNA has to hold that light. We are light beings, right? We're quantum beings and light, mitochondrial light. Like I also really, you love DNA, I love mitochondria. That's my other favorite, I would say, biological organelle in the body that just as DNA is very multidimensional in how it expresses and how we can perceive reality.
The mitochondria is a very special part of our cells. If you look at its history and its evolutionary biology history, it was its own organism. It didn't exist.
There's a mitochondrial DNA, which is really fascinating as well. As I started learning about it, I had no idea there was a mitochondrial DNA, but there is. That
It,
makes sense.
with the light quotient, I wanted to actually address what you said about the spiritual evolution is part of activating our DNA. And I want to confirm that because not just an opinion, but also I've done a lot of research with something that is parallel to geometry, which is gematria. Have you ever heard of gematria before?
Of
Okay.
course.
Okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure if for your audience that maybe hasn't heard of gematria, gematria is a form of geometry. However, it takes the alpha numeric digit behind each letter. So when you do that, you are starting to not just see shapes, but you're starting to understand the geometry of words. And this is important. This is where geometry actually is my favorite. I like to look at the equivalence of numbers and words. This is not numerology. This is gematria. This is something that our ancestors have gifted us with, is the ability to translate vibrational language and confirm information. This is where I became very interested in synchronicities, is by patterns of numbers in words. So anyway, just wanted to tell you that in my research of gematria, I studied the Greek language, which is where gematria is heavily used in historical times. And I translated some meditations from Greek language and found corresponding phrases that pertain to the dodecahedral DNA and learned that there is an equal number. There's the same geometry in the words that pertain that to the dodecahedral DNA will be a spiritual evolution. It will begin as a mental and spiritual evolution. We have to accept this first. If you want to see synchronicities in your life, you've got to be open to them. It's the same concept. I'm not yelling. I'm just really passionate about
I love your passion. I get really passionate about these things too. That's very interesting because, of course, for me, I grew up in Israel, so Gematria is very well known there. And so I don't even know the history where it started, but I definitely know in Hebrew language, Gematria and Kabbalah and everywhere else has been used. But I love that in terms of the Greek language as well, that you can find these patterns. Actually, wanted to mention to you there on mitochondrial DNA gets actually passed on by the female line, the mother. And often what I'm finding is the mitochondrial DNA, mitochondria is often dysfunctional. So when I'm meeting a lot of people that have mitochondrial issues, and this whole topic of quantum, where we've been developing quantum technology to support the mitochondria. And through that, I've learned about the DNA. And so that's been an interesting pattern for me to see where has it got distorted over time through traumas and ancestral kind of things that have been happening over the course of human evolution. So again, can we fix mitochondrial DNA? I don't like the word fix, but revert it back to its original state, just as we were talking about the original state of our the dodecahedral DNA.
we can. It's but it's a level of, like you said, it's not fixing, but we can attune the shape and the functionalities through frequency. Frequency work is the heart of specificity in our cells, in our organs, in our heart. We are stimulated. We have to be stimulated by something, even if it's in our thoughts. Thoughts are a form of sound. Sound produces emotions. Emotions carry energy that are healing. So in this case, we can transmute. I think we can definitely transmute the capability to enhance our mitochondrial DNA. We don't have to wait generations. It doesn't happen overnight, but we have to start somewhere. And I believe that frequency healing or frequency therapy is it's a potent beginning for anyone who ever wants to try it, and it's not hard. You can not hard meaning it's accessible. You don't have to. You can begin just by going outside in nature and listening to the trees, the rustling of the trees. You can listen to low frequency vibrations, like the didgeridoo is a very common one in ancient times. In Halsaflini, there is a hypogeum where it's an underground temple, and the structures, they believe, our ancestors tell us that the structures were particularly made to enhance the low frequency hertz. We're told that the hertz are at 111, but I'm going to say around 100 hertz. But though at those frequencies, you can feel your bones. You can feel your blood. You can start remembering a lot of different memories that you've never even thought of before. But I do believe that the mitochondria plays a very big role in our healing, and it's good that you brought this up because it's very specific, but it also has an intelligence of its own. And so is really important. We should think about specificity more often. Specificity is the cellular form of being mindful. Being mindful in how we want to feel. Specificity in our cells, if we start thinking about our mitochondria DNA, which is originally, like in the evolutionary biology aspect, is where life evolved from. But if we start thinking about this fundamental aspect about our cellular makeup, then we are bringing a more tailored approach, tailored and specific approach, precise approach to how we want to craft our evolutionary journey. And I believe that one way of doing that is through frequency.
We're moving from the age of materialism to the age of frequency. And then it's not just the recognition I think, and it comes with the spiritual evolution and where we are in on the human consciousness level as a society, as a collective, that we are ready for that. I think sound healing is becoming more and more mainstream than has ever been. I think just like yoga 30 years ago, now light language too is something that, starting. I've been on this journey for 6, 7 years, and it's incredible to see just in the last few years how many people are just ready to have the conversation, for me to do transmissions on that podcast. So it's also starting to pick up momentum. So we're starting to embrace the fact that we are frequency beings, and we have to be with the frequency and to find that alignment. Because ultimately, I think that's, we were just talking about resonance and harmonics. If we back in the soul level, in the alignment of our chakras, of our frequential orchestra that is best attuned in our organisms, in our inside and outside, then there's no such thing as disease, because disease is lack of ease, it's lack of harmonics, right? And if we bring it all back to ease, to harmonics, to balance, to coherence, then that's the future, really. I really believe that.
Even a zygote, when an egg and a sperm meet, that frequency is real. That frequency is also akin to a portal, and how our souls can be seated within that portal so that we can birth into this world as human beings through frequency. And on the topic of light codes and light language, we are light language. We are walking beings of light through our DNA since the beginning of time. And now that light language is becoming more of the talk. One thing that we really do need to remember, though, is that we can't forget our DNA. That is our light instrument. That is how we are receiving information, how we are continuously becoming matter, because consciousness is informing matter. That's what DNA is. So if we want to evolve, we have to listen. And we have to remember what is the actual instrument and the modality, and take care of that, which is our DNA.
Beautifully said, sister. So, as we've wrapping up this episode, what are your final words of wisdom to our listeners? Any recommendation? I know we talked about some of the things they can do, like going to nature, listening more, but is there anything else that you would like to share?
I strongly want to say to be brave, to have strength, even at times, if you're going through a path in life where you feel alone. I understand. There's many of us that understand, and there's many of us who are ready to be here for you. But also know that path is leading you to brilliance, to a place of birth. And birth isn't easy, and you're not alone. You'll never be alone. You are constantly surrounded, not just by light and frequency, but you are surrounded by the future that's waiting for you. And you are responsible for it. You wanted it. That's why you're going towards it. You planned this for lifetimes. So you are here now, and you're being taken to it, and just trust it. And I say this because there's a strong pulling in me that someone that's listening right now in your audience is going through something that is necessary for that, not just that person, but for their new selves, for their new generation. We need you. We need you. We need you to keep going. We need you to keep loving, keep trusting, and keep trying. no matter what, because there's something on the other side waiting for you.
Beautiful, powerful words, Ruslana. And where can someone find your book? What's a website that someone can find more information about you?
My book is sold where every books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, sold nationally and globally. So any bookstore.
And your website?
My website is ruslanaremennikova.com. I will be starting a new series, launching a new series of 12-stranded DNA activations. They are elegant, scientific, and very quirky meditations that are specifically geared towards the complexity, towards initiating an actual dialogue with our DNA. So I'll be starting that in the new year. I'm also doing a book tour. Beginning January 13th, I'll be going down to Florida and circulating around Georgia and Texas for the first 2 months. And then I'll be taking a small break before continuing.
Thank you so much, sister, for all the awareness you bring in. Check out Ruslana's book, Activating Our 12-Stranded DNA. And thank you for being here and tuning in and being open.
Thank you,
Thank
Dia.
you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. You can visit my website, dianadivine.com, where I'm now offering a special Quantum Master Creator free ebook that will help you to create the conscious dimensional life that you want. I'm also offering other programs, one-on-one sessions such as Quantum Healer Hypnosis and Quantum Crystalline Soul Healing to help you in your vibrational alignment. On sourcelanguage.org, I'm offering a digitized course that is self-paced to open you to the divine gift of light language. I'm Diana Divine, and keep connecting with your higher self.